Shadowlands is the movie that portrays the love story really between C.S. Lewis and his wife, Joy, which is it's a very joyful story, but it's also a very sad story because, and this is no spoiler, we know it from his life, his wife dies at a very young age from a cancer. And so C.S. Lewis needs to go through this, newly discovered love that got him really at an older age. And he starts experiencing the suffering of love as well. And in one moment in the movie he says, "Why love if losing hurts so much? I have no answers anymore, only the life I have lived. Twice in that life I have been given the choice, as a boy and as a man. The boy chose safety, the man chooses suffering." So as Lewis grew up, he grew also to understand that love in this life is not without a mix of suffering. Joy, but not without sadness, and hope, but not without fear. He understood, and that's why the name of the movie, that this is a shadowland. This whole life is, a combination of shadows, only pointing to a reality that is to come after this life. It is only a shadow of the life to come. Our readings today speak about the end of this life, but even more so about the life that comes after death. Life is in itself a desire to live. We know that. We have this natural intuition in ourselves that we cannot just live and then die. Every civilization in the history of humanity has had a way of dealing with afterlife issues. The Hebrews spoke about the Sheol, Hades for the Greek, Orcus for the Roman Empire, but they all hoped for some type of life after death. It shows that desire to live beyond the darkness of death and the shadows of this life. And Jesus devoted a good amount of his teaching to this present life that we know. We know that he taught us how to live a good life, the true art of living, we could say. Think of his teachings on forgiveness, how he taught us to forgive others, his teachings about loving other people, his teachings for community life, and even how to pray, and so many things for this life. But his most important teachings are about the life to come. That is what sets him apart as a master. He came to teach us a saving knowledge for this earth, but not of this earth. As the gospel today we hear, Christianity is not just another kind of wisdom for living life, but a teaching pointing to a fulfillment of life in eternity. Jesus has revealed to us the secrets of heaven, those things that laid hidden for us, and he came down from heaven to reveal that to us. We know that God sends us the shadow before we can enjoy the reality. This life is a shadowland, the life to come, the reality. So there's a strong bond between this life and the life to come. We know the shadows, but how is the reality that is coming going to be? What has been revealed to us about heaven, about the life to come? We know that there's a continuity of things, that there will be a smooth transition, but there's also a discontinuity we hear in the gospel today. Things that we know and things that we don't know. There's a jump. And so I want to share with you 3 things that we know about the life to come. So open your hearts and ears widely, because I will tell you 3 things that we'll find in heaven, 3 things that we can expect. And these are, of course, from what was revealed to us. And I think it can be described in 3 phrases. These are the 3 phrases. In the first place, there are some things that will be eliminated. Some things that we know from this life will be eliminated. Think of the first reading today. That's a very, very compelling reading. We hear about the 7 brothers, the Maccabees, and they're willing to give their lives for God rather than sin and go against the law. They gave their lives willingly, hoping for something that was to come. They didn't spare any suffering because they were waiting for that life to come. So they gladly presented their hands and their tongue, and they were tortured. And even more so, their mother was standing right next to them. And she was brought in so that she could discourage them in that moment. And instead of that, she encourages them to give their lives bravely in that moment because there's a life to come. What a picture. And we know that heaven is the triumph of good. And so there's many of the sufferings of this life that will not be there. Revelation 21:4 says, He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death or mourning, wailing or pain, for the old order has passed. So there are some things that will be eliminated. They will be done away with, wiped off completely. Picture that moment of heaven, anxiety-free, shame-free, hatred-free, pain-free. All these things that will be done away with, wiped off completely, as those Maccabees were expecting to be the truth. In the second place, so firstly, there's some things that will be eliminated, done away with. In the second place, some things will be transformed. Jesus speaks about this in the gospel today. Marriage in this life is a preparation for the marriage with God in heaven, you could say. When the love of God will be, will fill every corner of our hearts, and we will need nothing else but only God. He will fulfill our hearts completely, and we'll find our true satisfaction only in Him, wholly and completely. We are called to that celibacy of heaven, we could say, when our hearts is totally His and His heart totally ours. And so we know that marriage in this life is a preparation for that marriage bond with God in heaven, we could say. So there will be a transformation of marriage and so many other things. All that is genuine and truth and pure in this life will be brought to the next level, to fulfillment without any stain as we know it on this earth. So we know things but with stains in this life. So that love that C.S. Lewis was experiencing in this life, but with no suffering, but with no anxiety, and totally fulfilled in God. The shadow will give way to the purity of the reality. So some things will be eliminated, some things will be transformed, and finally, some things will be completely new. Things that we don't know yet. In 1 Corinthians 2:9, St. Paul shares, "Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, and it has not entered the human heart what God has prepared for those who love Him." What a beautiful expectation. We have not seen with our eyes. We have not heard. So it's not physical. It's not something that someone can tell us. It has not even entered the core of our being, our main experiences, our heart, what God has prepared for us. I don't know how about you and how do you relate to surprises. Maybe you don't like surprises. Maybe you do. I don't like surprises. I like to know. I like to be in control. I like to know what's coming. So this, at first doesn't sound very, very good. But then when I go back to the experiences of every surprise that God has had for me, for us, then I am totally confident that this will be a pleasant surprise, a good surprise for us. Imagine when we came to this world, everything was a surprise. Even as children, we were surprised. We opened our eyes as wide as we could to contemplate the beauties of this life. And not just creation, but the love of others and so many things that were so much of a pleasing surprise to us. And every time that I had allowed God to work in my life in some way, He has always surprised me for the better. And so we can expect that we have no idea, but whatever it is, it will be a very good surprise. And so we can await it, that newness in heaven, with great excitement. So my desire for all of us on this Sunday is that, in the first place, we can grow in our desire for heaven. We can grow in that desire to attain heaven, so that we can experience all those things done away with. My true desires being brought to fulfillment, transformed into fulfillment. And also all the new things that God has prepared for me. That we may spare no sacrifice for that. That is worth it. So I hope that we can all start desiring more and more and more for the reality of heaven. But secondly, I think that the eternal perspective helps us to live this life with more peace, not expecting from it what it cannot give us, knowing that it is a shadow, it is a passing shadow, but the life to come is eternal. So we can learn how to not grab on to things, to shadows, and to enjoy them in the right way, but knowing that they're shadows and they're passing. There's this great saint, St. Philip Neri. He used to say, "Preferisco paradiso" in Italian. I prefer paradise. I can enjoy the things of this earth, but I'm not settling for them. I prefer paradise. And he kept always that eternal perspective in his life. So knowing that this life is a great shadow allows us to really expect what is to come. The other day I was with a student talking about all these things, the shadows of this life, and we were doing so over coffee. And the coffee was really good. And so we finished our conversation, and he finished his coffee, and he said, "Man, that was a good shadow." So there's many good shadows of this life that we can enjoy. But knowing that our hearts are in the life that is eternal, I prefer paradise. I'm not clinging on to the shadows. One day the shadows of this life will be no more. They will pass away. We know that. And the Son of God, He's the guarantee of that. From His teaching, because He cannot deceive us, and also from His very life, because He died and He is now risen from the dead. And in heaven He awaits for us. And even more so, Jesus said in Matthew 13, "Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father." We know that one day in heaven we will shine with the light of the Father. And with light covers everything, there's no place for shadows. In that moment, all the shadows will be done away with. And the light of God will shine perfectly. And we will shine with Him in that eternal light.